Hey free-to-play gang, welcome back to another video. Now before we get into the topic of today's video, I want to talk a little bit more about a couple of questions that I posed to you guys in my community page. So right now there are about a couple of thousand replies, which is really awesome. So just collating all of your responses, I can kind of get an idea of what the general player base prefers in terms of how they would like to play the trial, and I also have the pros and cons to each of these options that I provided to you guys. So when I asked you guys, for example, just a curious thought, do you prefer event trials being full auto or not full auto, which means you actually have a choice, right? The reason why I asked this question is not to push to the developers to get rid of the full auto format. That's not the case at all. I just want to have an idea of which you guys prefer, because there are absolutely pros and cons to each of these choices. So for example, I prefer full auto, which is an option. This is not my choice, of course. I prefer full auto. The reason why this is potentially good is it levels the playing field and it allows everyone to just simply put together a team that works really well, and the AI is especially powerful, and then that team is probably going to be a lot more impactful than someone else's team who is just simply not that well built together, and I kind of get it. Whereas for the other choice, I prefer having a choice. I prefer basically having the choice of running manual or not. Now the pro about it is that obviously you can just auto run to get EX++, for example, but if you really want to chase the score, you want to do better than the rest, better than other players who just want to run it automatically and they don't really care too much about this content, then having a choice is really good, because that allows you to be competitive by running manually, and that at least gives you a kind of like goal, right? Some manual task right now so that you can achieve better score and get better rewards that corresponds to the effort that you put in yourself. So I'm actually quite happy that 71% of you guys actually prefer having a choice rather than to just straight up go full auto. But like I said, I kind of understand why 20% of you guys would prefer full auto. It levels the playing field a little bit. But now the reason why I personally prefer having a choice is, like I said, I want to get a kick by just beating the rest of the players in my bracket, for example, right? Just to score a lot better than them so that I get the top reward, which is also a really good reward. It's not like a bad reward per se. So the legendary abilimon is a really good price to aim for. So I think it's really well worth the time and investment just building a team that runs really well manually. And that also gives another spin to the current strategic landscape of Dislyte, which I think is quite important. So yeah, that was the first question. And now let's move on to the second question, which is another question for event trials. Do you prefer having predetermined sets to choose from, like it is right now, or do you prefer using your own equipment sets? So right now we cannot actually use our own equipment. We have to use pre-selected equipment sets that we can just play around with, but eventually it just falls back down into like the few sets that we are all going to use anyway. But like I said, there is always a pro and con to every single option here. So the pro of prefer using the predetermined equipment set is obviously this is really good for mid-game and early game players, because you may not have the equipment that can even compare to all these pre-allocations. So these pre-allocations are actually giving you a lot more advantage in acquiring, well, minimally the EX++. So it's definitely very free-to-play friendly. I can see it that way. But in terms of endgame players, this does not make sense at all, because a couple of reasons. Number one, your equipment might be far superior than whatever that they have assigned to you. And number two, this also takes away from the variety of ways that you can play around with your team. So for example, we already cannot run manually, right? But yet at the same time, we are not able to run specific sets. Like you can't really run the Astro set on Embla. You can't really run like a DPS Panacea set on Everett, for example, because those sets just don't really exist. So even in this current trial where the enemies deal a lot of AoE damage, you cannot even use Everett over here, which is kind of a shame. But yeah, it is what it is. Okay, so then the next choice, I prefer using my own equipment. Like I said, this is, in my opinion, it has a lot more pros than cons per se, because for the most part, most of the players in the game right now, they are kind of like towards the end game, and you guys definitely have the equipments that you will need for this trial. So I think all in all, they made so many changes to the current trial, and it kind of makes it like they want to make it easier for early gamers, which I understand, but it makes it even more pay to win, because right now you cannot manual play, which means you're really competing against other players with the same equipment as you have. So how then would two different players with the exact same equipment sets differ from each other, right? Let's say you have the same Espers as well. The only ways that you can differ from each other is by having more resonances, which is pay to win. Or number two, you're able to set up a macro on your PC and just run this overnight, which is also in its own sense pay to win, because that consumes a lot of electricity and there is extra cost. So all in all, this new format is definitely more pay to win than it were in the past. Alright, so now with that out of the way, let me show you guys how I achieved 11 million score, and this is definitely not going to be free to play at all. if you guys have the same espers with lower resonances, you're probably not going to compete, like I said, because I have ran this so many times for over a period of like, I don't know, 24 hours or something like that. Obviously, I'm not someone who would use macros. I'm not that kind of person. I mean, that's cheating, right? I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't cheat, right? Would I cheat? Okay, so anyway, like I said, resonances. And before we take a look at my team, I want to show you guys what other varieties there are. Okay, so obviously I'm over here. This is the setup that I'm using. But I think it's quite important to also take note of the other players who are scoring really well. So for example, He Cha-La, he's using a Lian, Embla, Xuan Pin, R2, by the way, R2 Xuan Pin, and a Yun Chuan here. So his strategy is definitely a lot more different from mine because he's only relying on one single support, and that support is built completely different as to how I would build my supports. Then next we have Tiki, who you guys probably know as Tom, who is also a Lilith staff. So I'm not sure whether this trial is completely fair, but hey. So the way that he has built his team is to focus a little bit more on buff stripping. So he has Tricky here with the accuracy lead so that he can AoE strip, so that he can remove away all the crit rate 100% buffs that the enemies have, which is a big factor over here. And aside from Tricky, he's running with two freaking supports. He has Lian and he also has Ahmed. So in my lineup, I am also running two supports, but I'm not running a buff stripper. And the rest of the other players, they are either using my comp or they are just doing about 5 million or so. So as you can see, right, they are kind of running similar setups as I am, but the thing is I have the reso advantage, and that is why I'm able to score so much higher. So this is why this content is now freaking pay to win. Okay, so let's take a look at my team and why I built it this way. So let's start off with Abigail. The reason why she's here is for a couple of reasons. Number one, she has a strong shield on her second skill. And number two, she also has the attack up buff, which also provides a little bit of absorb for some lifesteal. So that's really good because the thing is, Ahmed alone is not able to sustain the entire team. Not for this fight because of the amount of AoE damage that all these ads have, right? They have a lot of AoE damage and that kind of piles up really quickly. So I'm running her with the Ocean set very clearly just to spam a lot of her second and third skill. And I also have the Hold Fast set on her so that gives my entire team a little bit more defense, which is really important, I would think. Because like I said, the enemies just deal a lot of AoE damage and that would definitely eat into your DPS espers. Now, in the same vein, that is the same reason why I'm running Embla and Yun Chuan. I should put them together. Embla and Yun Chuan with the Nether set. Now, there are a couple of other reasons why I'm running a Nether set because, like, number one, if I were to run the Thunder and Fiery set, I would have decent crit rate and decent crit damage, but I'll have absolutely no speed, which is a big issue to me. So I think running the Nether Avatar set is kind of like a good balance between crit rate, between crit damage, and also a lot of speed, which I think is really important if you want to like just keep overlapping the enemies and taking a lot of turns this way. And secondly, another big factor why the Nether set is so important is because it is, in my opinion, quite important for you to relieve Ahmed of his duties by healing yourself as much as possible so that he can focus his heals onto other espers that actually need the healing, aside from just always spamming heal on your DPS who is like the most fragile, right? So I think the Nether set is quite important for just like overall consistency and allowing my team to survive for as long as possible. And then next we have Yun Chuan with the exact same setup. So it's like I said, right, it's very important. The Nether Avatar set for a lot of speed, a lot of crit rate, a lot of crit damage, and at the same time, a little bit of accuracy as well. For some reason, this set has some decent accuracy, which is kind of nice. It's not enough for the ads, but it is more than enough for Anna over here, which is, I guess, the most important aspect. And then next, because we don't have a buff stripper, we have to use Norah for buff stripping, and that's why she has the recurve set here for an additional 76% accuracy so that we can strip off the crit resist buffs that the ads have, right? Because whenever Anna uses her third skill, that's going to give crit resist to all of her allies, including herself, which completely mitigates all kinds of crits, which means your Yun Chuan is not able to apply third eye seal. So your Norah here has to be able to strip buffs very consistently, and this is why she has 76% accuracy. And the relief set just helps her to cast her first skill a little bit more often because I have a lot of espers that would use their first skill. So for example, Abigail, if she uses her third skill into her second skill, she will then follow up with her first skill for like a couple of turns afterwards. Ahmed, on the other hand, will always prioritize his first skill unless my team needs a lot of healing. Yun Chuan, after using his third skill, goes into his first skill for like another 3 more turns. So there is a lot of first skills being used over here, active casting of first skill, which makes the relief set quite important. And I did position her in front of Ahmed because I think it's more important that her relief procs before Ahmed. If you guys don't really know what I'm talking about, I made a video recently talking a little bit about why the relief set is so good and how it works, and I'll probably pin it at the top unless I forget about it. But yeah, so this is the reason why Norah is built with this particular setup. And then next we have Ahmed. So very similar to Norah, except that we do not need accuracy anymore because there is no point. So instead of accuracy, I am giving him the Avatar set so that, you know, the enemies, they AoE a lot, so there is a good chance that Ahmed can counter attack. And if he does, that is going to help us heal past the damage that the enemies are doing. So let's take a look at how this team works. And I'm probably going to skip a few just to give you guys an idea of what the average score is going to look like. The average is not super high, so you just have to keep on running this until you get the best RNG, and that's it. So this is literally the trials right now. It's super bland and super boring. So you notice that Anna will use her third skill first, which gives the crit resist buff onto the entire team. So we cannot crit at all. None of our experts can crit, which means Yunchuan's Guardian Lord doesn't actually do anything at all. So it's very important that Norah strips everything with her AoE attack, right? Her Halcyon. So something like this. She's probably going to use it right now. Tempo Trio, Tempo Trio, Tempo Trio. Okay, right now, at least. Okay, Tempo Trio and Halcyon Harmonic. Let's go. Boom! And that strips away all the crit resist buffs that they have. And then next, Anna is actually going to follow up with her invincibility, but because right now we already have the third eye seal from Yunchuan, because we got rid of the crit resist buff, he's actually able to strip away the invincibility buff that she would have like real soon, because the dog can actually steal invincibility. The dog can steal buffs, right? Okay, and here we go. Hopefully, now. Alright, so she gains invincibility, we are going to take it away. Damn it. Okay, I mean, her resist is actually quite low, so it shouldn't be that much of a problem for us to strip it, but we failed to strip it 3 times. But it is what it is. So maybe you might want to give Yunchuan not the Avatar set, maybe you might want to give him, I don't know, recurve set if you want to ensure that you strip off the invincibility, but in my opinion it's not super important because you can just keep on rerunning this, so just keep spamming it until you get a really good score. And as you can see, our score is looking okay, it's looking pretty good. I think this is going to be about 6 million. Yeah, 6.9 million. Okay, really close to 7 million. So let's actually just skip this a couple more runs and get a better idea of how this averages out to be. But again, like I said, this content is all about just skipping, right? 8 million plus, okay, that's pretty cool. It's all about just skipping until you get the perfect score. So it's not even about averages anymore because they made it so easy for you to get your final score by just simply skipping it, which completely takes away from like this being a fun content or like a competitive content. It's just completely not competitive anymore. It's just all about skipping. So I kind of hate it. It's kind of boring. And I know why some of you guys might like it because it's easy for you to clear it. But in my opinion, it honestly doesn't hurt to just run it one time and get a good score and then just get the hell out of this content forever. So it's not super important that you have a skip if your whole goal is to just do it one time and just get away from it. But this is obviously just my opinion on the matter, right? So I just feel like adding the skip just cheapens the content so much, which is why I don't really like it. But I think the most important thing is the manual content. I feel like it's a huge mistake to get rid of the manual because right now this is what manual content looks like. Me just skipping, and that is exactly what the game is turning into. It's just becoming a blitz fest and I don't really like it. I hope the devs can do something about it. Anyway, that's it for this video. Hope you guys learned something or two, right? And if you guys enjoyed today's content, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. It really helps the channel, and subscribe for more Dislyte content. Now with that said, this has been Derek Free to Play, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Yeah, no change in score. RIP.